Hi, everyone.
Hello,
I'm Anastasia.
my name is Evgeny.
And we're thrilled to have Nikola Jeremić with us today. Nikola is a celebrated composer who has made an undeniable impact on the gaming industry with his incredible soundtracks. Known for blending classical training with innovative electronic elements, his music has been featured in some of the biggest titles in gaming, including Destiny 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Warhammer 40k, and Aliens Dark Descent. Poof.
Hello, Nikola. Thank you for joining
Hello,
us.
Evgeny, and hello, Anastasia.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure to finally get a chance to talk to you guys.
Yes,
True that.
indeed. All right, let's get to the chase. First question. That's has absolutely nothing to do with the gaming industry, music at all, but it's very, very important to us. Can
Okay.
burek be made with cheese or anything other than meat?
Burek is only with meat.
Of course.
Anything else is an insult to humanity. So there are a lot of variations of burek throughout Serbia, but the only true burek is with beef and lamb, which is sort of like originally inherited through Turkish Empire that was here on the Balkans. And if you go into Bosnia and say, "Can I have a burek with cheese?" people will throw you out. You know, that's like. But in Serbia, it's a little bit different. We're a little bit more open to experimentation. So you have variations of burek with cheese, which is wrong, and empty burek, which is even more
Empty.
wrong.
Yes.
Oh my god. What about
Yeah,
the one with spinach?
What's the point?
Yeah, there's with spinach, with there's a pizza burek, which I said
No.
every time someone mentions pizza burek, a Bosnian and an Italian die. So I tried it once. It's horrible. It's like ham and ketchup inside of a burek meat, and why would anyone want that outside of like regular meat? And there was when there's like Eastern. When there's Easter in Serbia and people are like fasting, they're not eating meat or dairy products or anything. Some idiot made burek with tuna.
No.
And
oh my god.
I was like, why? Why would you do that? But, burek is only with meat. And it will always be only with meat. Traditionally, burek that we inherited from the Turks, the word burek is basically what they have as burek in Turkey. And that thing is made only with either beef or veal or lamb, And here we call it like burek with cheese, burek with this, but it's actually in Bosnia, they call it a cheese pie.
Yeah.
It's a pie, but with cheese. So whoever called it, like in Serbia, it was easier for us. I mean, we have cheese pie, but when you see the shape of it, like in every bakery or something, that's actually burek, but with cheese, which is wrong, So that's the, there are discussions for whether burek can only be with meat or with cheese and anything else. It's like that internet discussion that was like a few years ago about is this dress black and blue or, gold and white. So that's basically, but my opinion is that, an opinion of many bakers is that real burek is only with meat. Not even with pork. People say like, okay, yeah, burek with pork meat, but the real traditional burek is with either lamb or beef, not pork. But okay, pork is okay. It's kind of like a gray area. It's meat, but it's no cheese.
Right, okay.
I'm glad we settled this.
Yeah, that's good. Regarding the dress, by the way, did you know this trend or like this forced topic on the internet is turning 10 years old this year?
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. 10 years old. Can you imagine that?
I feel old right now.
Oh my god, I feel old every day. Every day I get a pop-up like, this song is turning 20 years old. I'm like, what? How? When? What did I do all those 20 years? But yeah.
I switched those pop-ups a long time ago.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Regarding the good old times, did you have to play a musical instrument at school, and what was it? Because, I mean, in Serbian schools, it's kind of popular, right?
It does look
Yeah.
like every kid is like has to play
Yeah,
either this or that.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of like I wasn't made to sort of like play. My parents didn't force me. I was never forced to play a musical instrument, nor teachers at elementary school ever forced us to play any musical instrument. I think it's more of a trend in Serbia that like the way that I see that a lot of kids nowadays have so many activities. That is why we have kids that are with ADHD and everything, kind of like attention disorders and everything. It's because their parents are forcing their kids to have like a lot of you have like, the way that I see it, you have like two extremes. You have parents that are not forcing their kids to anything, and their kids are immediately introduced to tablets, phones, video games, television, blah blah blah. And you have parents who are kind of like forcing their kids into a lot of activities just for show. My daughter goes she learns English and she learns Russian and she learns French and she speaks German like she was born there, and she plays the piano, and then she goes to a ballet school, and then she plays the violin, and then she goes to volleyball, and then she plays tennis to be like, that's the situation that, kind of like the two extremes. There are, of course, middle grounds that, like, you have my nephew, for example. He studies Japanese language and he studies piano, and that's it. Those are his interests, and that's totally fine. When I was a kid, when I was like 7 years old, the only thing that I was interested was cartoons. I didn't discover love for music until I was, I think, 12 or 13, when I got into my sort of like pubic period, teenage years. When I was 13, basically, I started discovering rock and roll music, heavy metal, and that is what always interested me.
Yeah.
My music teacher, who was an pretty old school, purebred communist, and then I was like 13 years old at that time when I got into his class, and all my life I have long hair. The only part in my life where I had short hair was when I started elementary school at 7 years old, and I had like this brief period between the first and the third grade of elementary school. I had short hair because my parents were worried that kids would molest me and bully me because of my long hair, and they would call me a girl or something like that, which they did, of course, after I got it, especially in my teenage years, but my father has long hair. He always listened to rock and roll, so I was kind of like adopted this lifestyle since the early ages. But I really got interested into listening to music when I was 13, with rock and roll, with heavy metal, with blues, jazz, and then through video games. It was like early 2002, 2003 when I got my first PC. The first video game that I played on PC was Diablo, the first Diablo by Blizzard.
Okay.
That is my first PC Master Race, game. But before that, I played Nintendo, I played Sega, I played Sony, and whatever, at my friends' houses, because I never owned a console until I was 27. So my parents didn't want to buy me one. So I bought my first Xbox when I was 27. but so I started, getting more and more interested into music, and I started nagging my parents to buy me an electric guitar to start practicing. And I got my first guitar when I was 15, and it was an acoustic guitar. And I was so bored when I saw that it was an acoustic guitar. I was like, I don't want to play this. Nobody wants to play acoustic guitar. I want to make the noise that comes from the radio. I want to play electric guitar, and I kind of like lost interest into acoustic guitar pretty early. And my music teacher at that time at elementary school, who also kind of like bullied me because of my long hair and because I didn't want to sing in school's choir, he said, "You will never become a musician. You should be banned from ever doing music in your life because you are incompetent to sing." And he was right. I am incompetent to sing. I cannot sing. But I was inspired by a lot of rock and roll and a lot of video game soundtracks that I discovered love for symphonic music through video games. Especially through Halo. Halo is my holy grail of gaming, and first time I heard that melody from Halo, from the first Halo Combat Evolved, I was like, wow, this is so cool. And then there was, I don't know, Neverwinter Nights and Morrowind, and then Blizzard, Warcraft, World of Warcraft, all of that. So I was the teenager who started listening. Aside, teenagers in Serbia were mostly, were mostly following modern trends. Like at that time when I was a teenager, you had Eminem, 50 Cent, Britney Spears, Shakira, whatever, kids were listening at that time. I was listening Metallica and video game soundtracks and film soundtracks, and it went on and on and on, and black metal from Russia and from Norway, and I got more and more interested into that when I was in high school, from my 16 up until 19 years old, and when I turned 16, I got my electric guitar. And I never went to music school sort of like for proper musical education, institutional education. I am musically trained and musically educated only by myself. I never attended music classes or something like that,
Sure.
So everything that I know about music, I learned either by myself or by asking other fellow musicians. I had a guitar teacher for a short period of time in my life when I was 18 years old. And we worked together for like a year or so, but our classes and our practices together were mostly based on discussions about various styles of music and how you can incorporate that with electric guitar, compared to kind of like he was teaching, he wasn't teaching me like, okay, you play this chord like this, you can play this scale like that, or blah, blah, blah. So he was mostly teaching me through songs that I liked. So like at that time I was listening to a lot of Yngwie Malmsteen and Satriani and Steve Vai and Vangelis and film soundtrack, and he was like, well, this melody from Star Wars, you can play it like this on the guitar, this is this scale, this is this key, or and when I got to, so I wasn't formally musically trained. I was more self-taught, self-educated, and I play a lot of instruments, just I don't play any of them particularly well. This is what I like to say. But it's good enough for the stuff that I compose.
Jesus, but can I interrupt you for a second? You're saying you're good enough for the stuff that you compose, but like hearing what you did, like for Warhammer, for instance, how can somebody who is self-taught, how? I don't get it. I mean, inventing music for me is like, thinking of a new color. You basically cannot think of this because how can you do that? And the same with music. How can you come up with something new, especially if you were not taught to? How did you do
Yeah.
that? We need some information here.
Okay. Well, you see, when working on most of my game projects that I work on involve either fantasy or sci-fi. You know, because it's basically genres of gaming are mostly popular like that. I wish I could do a racing game, for example. Somebody please from Codemasters or from Electronic Arts or whatever, or from Sony, I would love to write at least one piece of music for Forza Motorsport or for Gran Turismo or for Need for Speed or whatever.
We've got one racing game.
Yeah, one, like at least one racing game out of those, or something like that. But most of the stuff that I get to work on is sci-fi and fantasy, and especially when working on sci-fi. Let's say, for example, Warhammer. You mentioned Warhammer, especially Warhammer 40,000, which is this grim, dark future and something like that. So, what my coworker Doyle Donahue and I are working on together when it comes to Warhammer is mostly the world of Warhammer is so inspiring. It's very well defined in its genre, but musically, you can do whatever you want, and that is the pure joy of working on Warhammer. Because Doyle and I together, we have our own musical style that we did on Battlefleet Gothic Armada, that we worked on Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, that we also worked on official Warhammer animated series, Hammer and Bolter. We did 3 episodes. That one is completely different than for example, what I did for Owlcat Games, which is a Russian studio, what they did for Rogue Trader, which is a different story set in a Warhammer 40,000 universe. And, Rogue Trader is completely different from this latest game that Jesper Kid scored. I usually remember the composer better than I remember the name of the game, but it's I think it's called Dark Tide. Dark Tide, Dark Tide, which is set in Warhammer 40,000 it's like a Left 4 Dead in Warhammer 40,000 universe, and that one is completely sounding different than what any of us are doing, and Space Marine 2 sounds totally different. So what Warhammer invites you to do is to experiment, like what you said, like it's a new color. Every instrument is a new color, and the technology, the advance of technology has enabled us composers to create new colors. You can create beautiful atmospheres from just electric guitar, for example, because guitar is my main instrument, let's say, for example. So I can have like an electric guitar, plug it into an amplifier, use a lot of effects on it, reverbs, echoes, delays, choruses, blah blah blah, distortions, and I can make that thing sounding. I can play it with a pick, I can play it with my fingers, I can use a violin bow on it and make an atmosphere out of it. I can make a pulse bass out of it. You can do so many things. And it's just this is why I love working on sci-fi, especially with synthesizers and electronic elements, is because when you're composing, you're thinking about textures. You're not thinking that much about, of course, you think about it musically, about harmony, about counterpoint, about melody. It needs to have a clear, defined melody and harmony. But you are more into experimenting with otherworldly sounds that you can create. There was this project that I think in one of the episodes of Hammer and Bolter that I did with Doyle, there was this atmospheric drone that was in this scary scene. And that atmospheric drone was me playing a dry rack where you put your laundry to dry. It's a string. It's a metal string. If tightened enough, it can produce a sound. So if you put enough resin on it,
Mhm.
so you can play it with a violin bow. And and you have to record it with a very specific microphone, in order for it to make this type of sound.
Yeah.
It's completely atonal. It doesn't have a tone. It doesn't have a specific note. It's more like noise. But if you digitally process it and do something with it in a computer, you can make beautiful or horrible things with it.
Mhm.
Speaking of Warhammer, it's mostly horrible things because the world itself is filled of horrible things
Yeah.
that will, everything can and will kill you given the chance. That's the world of Warhammer.
Yeah. Exactly.
We know that you also write music for films, not
Mhm.
only for games. Well, the question is, how does the process of writing music for films differ from writing music for games?
Yeah, good question. So the music for films, when the way that I approach music for films is mostly, film is a linear media. You can treat it as a cut, like any cut scene in a video game.
Yeah.
Can also be treated as a short film. So you are limited to what's going on in the scene, and you're limited to the scene timeline. So every time so when you compose a piece of music for this scene, you can rewind it, play it back again and again and again. It will always go the same way.
Mhm.
When working for a video game, especially if we're talking about complex interactive music systems that are implemented with Wise or Fmod or whatever. So basically, the way that you approach composing a video game, especially, as I said, these interactive music systems that are complex, you are basically, you're not limited with picture. You have this unlimited playground that gets to be controlled by the interactions of player with the world of the game. And you need to compose music for various situations, and they all need to play in an infinite loop and switch between one another seamlessly. So the way that I would compare it to film is that music for film is very linear. Music is sort of like working for the film, whereas music for the game has this unlimited amount of playback, which is controlled by the player, and you're basically composing it as small pieces of music that can be stacked on one another.
Mhm.
The way that I like to call it in short terms, music for video games is a musical box of Legos that you get to assemble for a video game. That the game's engine assembles them for you. You just put it in there, you give commands to audio middleware what it needs to do, and then audio middleware picks up the command from the game engine itself. And that is like for example, there are cues of music in film that can be 10 minutes long. Average piece of music in a video game is 3 minutes long, but if you divide it into these building blocks, into these segments in various layers, you can create 1 hour of music playback with just those 3 minutes of various layers, and it will never sound the same. It all depends, and it will playback. It will last as long as the player is interacting in a way that it needs to interact.
Yeah.
So if you're exploring a magical forest, you need 3 minutes of music for this magical forest, but it needs to loop back and switch from segment to segment so that the players don't recognize that it's looping. So if somebody stays in this forest for like 1 hour, you need to have 1 hour of this music playback that will never be boring. And it's the same for combat music, especially for combat music. Like you can end combat very shortly in like 30 seconds, or if it's a boss fight, it can last for like 30 minutes. If you're playing Dark Souls, it can last between 1 second to 60 minutes, depending on your skill,
Yeah. Like I know that's with FTL, for example, Faster Than Light, a game of 2012. They had two tracks for each situation. For example, if nothing is happening, if you're just exploring the space, well, it's basically the game about space and space fights and so on. So if everything is kind of quiet, then the musical theme is playing like in a very quiet mode. But when a battle begins, the same theme changes like instantly into something more intense. But it's like the same theme. So basically, the composers created two themes of each, or two variants of each track to be able to use them during some kind of calm situations and for like very intense situations. So
I think most of my work is evolving around video games, and without any disrespect to fellow composers who are working only in film, but I think that music for video games, not actually music in an artistic way, but it technically, the technical approach to composing music for a video game is a lot more complex than a technical approach to composing music for a film. With all due respect to film composers and everything, I know I will get trashed probably in comments in the future, but yeah, because when you're composing music for film, I mean, it's just the way that I see it, the way that I approach it. When I'm composing a music for a film, I have this instrumental template that I'm using for composing, and it's like composing music from left to right. It has this length that you need to fill in, but when you're composing for video game, you're composing from left to right and from top to bottom. So basically, you can start with one instrument in an ambient setting, and then it can get introduced. You introduced like if it has like there was this game called Stray Blade that I worked on 2 years ago. The studio is Point Blank Games. It was published by 505 Games. It's an epic fantasy action RPG. It looks very colorful, very friendly, very inviting, but the combat is very, very difficult, like you would have it in a Souls-like game. But here's the thing, the music that we had is like, we had this combat music that was depending on the amount of enemies that surround you. So let's say we will not go full-blown action music for for enemies that are like levels lower than you. You have something, you will quickly easily dispatch them. You have like two instruments playing. Then if you have like enemies that are of the same level as you are, the combat becomes a little bit more difficult. So on top of those two instruments, you add a couple of more layers, and then enemies that are stronger than you add more layers, but everything needs to work together. And then when there's like a mini boss, you have like additional layer of intensity and tension that you like. This mini boss is attacking you, his minions are attacking you, every other enemy out there is attacking you. You don't know what's going on the screen. The music is helping you sort of like understand the situation, that like you're about to die, get the hell out, And in boss fights, what we did for boss fights for that game is that we had like a vice versa approach. So you start your music for boss fight. The layers of music were attached to health bar of the boss. So if the boss is like at full health up until like maybe 70%, you have this like kind of like really mean, aggressive music playing that gives you a sense of like, this boss is dangerous. You need to tactically approach this combat. As you strip him down of your health, the music becomes more inviting up until the moment where your boss is at like the last 30% of health. The music becomes heroic. Like you're the boss right now. You're smashing him, and the music goes from this, and it's all seamlessly. And for ambient music, we had this situation where you have to change music from day to night. It's the same arrangement. It has like this maybe 2 or 3 layers of instruments that are shared, but as you go deeper into, for example, into the deeper night later, like into midnight or something, there's less and less instruments playing, and they're playing more sparsely. Instead of playing 4 notes, it plays like 1 and then the 5th note and then the other. So, and that all goes like seamlessly. So that's when I try to explain like how complex is the musical system for a video game compared to a film.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The music has to be the message like itself, kind of narrative technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of games have become, I mostly get attached to video games not because of the gameplay, but mostly because of the music and the story. There are some games that I played that don't have a very, inviting gameplay. They're not particularly, interesting to me to play.
Yes.
But the story is very good. And that is the reason why I play video games. I approach video games as I would approach reading a fantasy book or something like that, or as I would approach watching a movie. I'm a storyteller with my music, and I love telling stories, and I love listening to stories. I love mythology. I love fairy tales. That is what inspired me to become a composer in the first place. I like to tell stories through music, and thanks to video games and thanks to films, we have more and more kids getting interested into orchestral and classical music, which I think is fantastic. And imagine the world that we live in. Imagine if the composers from the old times would like compose music for games now. It all started from that. I say that, like, if classical music of the 19th century didn't exist, we wouldn't have film music and game music that we have today. Sure, classical music in the 18th century, Mozart, Beethoven, Joseph Haydn, Franz Liszt, blah, 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 that part, and Bach before that, Baroque, that's all kind of like, I'm not into that classical, Vienna classical music. I am more into romantic aspects of classical period of music. So the 19th centuries, when Korsakov and Tchaikovsky and Bedřich Smetana, Wagner, those guys are my composing heroes of that time, and that I still listen to nowadays. And I think it would be like sort of like, there's a lot of games that kind of like use classical music in either trailers, in even in gameplay, because it's all a part of public domain. And they're, as I said, thanks to video games and thanks to films, symphony orchestras and classically trained musicians have work today.
Speaking of which, what do you think? What game would Bach or Tchaikovsky would compose?
Okay, Bach. Let's say Bach, for example. Bach would compose something definitely Japanese.
That's
an interesting idea.
Okay, unexpected.
And now Bach would definitely Bach's music would definitely be used in some kind of like Japanese
Dark Souls
game.
Okay.
It would be kind of like, Bach's music would be in, like, I don't know, Castlevania, something like that. It's always like it sounds like, it sounds like Bach, Castlevania, something like that, or Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
In a calmer way, Dark Souls. Wagner would be definitely the best for like Dark Souls and for all of these fantasy types of games. Richard Wagner. Tchaikovsky and Korsakov, for example, those are my two favorite composers anyway. I remember when I was working, there was this video game that I had to that I was working on, and they were kind of like sending me examples of Korsakov's Scheherazade and the city of Kitej and, you know, something like that. And maybe Korsakov would definitely compose something that some action adventure for PlayStation Studios. Korsakov would be for something like God of War, Uncharted. You know, that is the way that I see it. You know, that is Korsakov for me. Big storytelling, Dragon Age, Skyrim, you know, Elder Scrolls, that type of stuff. That would be Korsakov, you know, definitely. Tchaikovsky would be an interesting would be very popular among indie developers, the way that I see it. You know, Shelkunshik or something like that, you know, the Nutcracker. I always think about, you know, like for those cute little 2D artsy indie games, you know, that is where I see like Tchaikovsky's music would be very, very good. If we're talking about orchestral music, but, you know, modern classical composers, early 20th century, you know, like I don't know, Shostakovich or something like that. Shostakovich would work on something like The Last of Us. You know, that, you know,
okay.
You know, he has like these very, very interesting, you know, very minimalistic compositions. And like, I'm not very, you know, into postmodern, you know, classical composers of the early 20th century. But yeah, I always see like Shostakovich for something like, you know, that type of game, not necessarily for like The Last of Us, but the game that it's in that style, a survival, creepy survival game, you know, of that kind, you know, that would be, you know, Shostakovich for me. But all those classically, you know, Beethoven, Mozart, Joseph Haydn, all of that goes straight into Japanese video games, like I don't know, either horror Japanese games, because they're very much inspired by classical music of the West, you know, and they have developed their own style now into this sort of like the way that I like to call it, like the Japanese anime music of Joe Hisaishi, you know, Nobuo Uematsu, Tetsuya Takashi, and the other guys. You know, they have their own very specific style right now, but it's inspired either by classical music or by jazz. So that's where they go. You know, romantic period, 19th century Russian and German composers, they are straight for action adventures.
Right.
Whatever, you know, straight into action adventures.
Oh, thank you for a very specific answer.
Yeah, extraordinary specific, but that's
a lot
cool
to think of.
Do you think artificial intelligence would be able to be like? So we have a prompt, right? Can you, for instance, create music for, I don't know, whatever game made by or in a style of Beethoven or Bach or whatever? Do you think AI would be able to do that? And what's your take on AI in general? Do you think AI can take over, or what is it going to be like?
It will never be able to take over, because the way that it will never be able to take over visual arts.
Yeah.
You know, it can evolve into something. The way that I see it is that it's becoming something very, very popular.
Yeah.
But it will never replace actual, you know, human beings. It will never. That is why it's called artificial intelligence. It's something artificially, you know, created. You can put an artificial plastic tomato in your garden, but you won't be able to eat it and enjoy it. You know, the same way that you won't be able to, the music, I know the music industry, I'm following these news, the music industry is freaking out
Of course.
when it comes to artificial
Same as
intelligence.
artists, same
Yeah.
as linguists nowadays. Oh my god.
Yeah,
That's pretty much everyone.
especially when it comes to this production music
Yeah.
for television,
Mhm.
where now you have, music for television that's generated by AI for like documentaries, blah, 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 blah. But still, all of these, let's call them, without any disrespect to smaller, studios, but all the serious television productions like BBC, National Geographic, Discovery, History Channel, Viasat, whatever you have, all of these, documentaries, television specials, they will always have actual humans writing
human
music for
production.
the same way that the filmmakers will hire actual composers. Artificial intelligence can create music. You can do a prompt like make me a music inspired in the style of Hans Zimmer's Inception and whatever, and it will make it. Sure. Divided into stems, into separate instruments. Sure, it can do that. But you will not be able to synchronize it to picture. The same way that you cannot create a complex musical system with the use of AI. Sure, AI can help you in, for example, it can help you in make me an inspiration. For example, I need a piece of music that is inspired by Bear McCreary's work for Sony's God of War game. And it gives me, you type it into a prompt, it gives me examples. Okay, first problem is this music is already owned by the company that owns the AI that generated it. So
Oh my god.
immediate, if you put it in a video game, you are getting an immediate copyright claim.
Yeah.
And the problem for video games is that every asset of the video game is owned by the studio who developed it.
True.
So any music that I create for the video game after I finish it is owned by my client, the developer that of course, I have royalties from that music if the music is being performed and played somewhere and everything, and I get some royalties, mechanical rights from soundtrack sales or whatever. That's true. But I was hired to create an asset for a video game, the same way that a 2D artist is hired to create a concept artwork for the same game. So that's where the problem starts with AI generated music inside a video game. The same way goes for films. You can put this piece of music generated into a video game, but you have to pay royalties for it. You have to acknowledge the copyrighted material that you used. It's like you have to pay the license for using it. And any AAA game developer will not allow itself to have, not even indies, people want to, when a studio works, they want to have their own assets saved, stored in their databases.
Right.
So that's a technical, issue that I think why AI will never be able to replace actual composers. And I've listened to AI generated. It sounds great.
Soulless.
But it sounds soulless. It's like a randomized piece of information. Like when you're seeing it, where it can take over, and the way that I see it, why it was created, is that there's a lot of content creators on social networks who don't want to pay royalties and who don't want to pay licenses for music for their video reels, who don't want to hire voice actors for narrating their videos, and they resolve to AI. When Canva was introduced, everybody in like artist industry, they freak out. Well, nobody will hire me anymore because now every dummy can, go and pay a subscription service to Canva, and you can create something that's free. Okay, so yeah, sure, you can do that, but nowadays you have actual artists who are using Canva for, doing minor things, creating stuff, using their own, kind of like implementing it into their own work,
So like it's a tool for artists, not a replacement of artists.
Yeah, like enhancing it for their own art. And the way that I introduce artificial intelligence in my own music is that I don't, for example, usually developers give me examples of actual composed music from real live people, organic music, no GMO and stuff like that. And I listen to those examples. But the way that I use AI technology in my own music is that I have plugins that are helping me clean up the bad resonances in my instruments for example, where AI is more sort of like surgically precise than a human ear can do it. Let's say, for example, this violin is screeching very hard in the background, and whatever I do with either an equalizer or a compressor or processing it in any way that I have tools, it's not helping. I resolve to AI, and for example, I allow AI to listen to this instrument in the context of my composition, in the relationship with other instruments that are playing in my composition, and it will soothe and it will, smoothen out the noises that I don't want to hear. But the performance and the melody and everything else is my own.
Yeah.
So it's only and it will not even replace audio engineers in that way. So I graduated as an audio engineer. So, that is why I wanted to study audio engineering, so I can have technical knowledge on how I should record and mix and process my music to be commercially acceptable and sounding. So that's and even the most successful audio engineers are using artificial intelligence in that way specifically to tweak some issues in sound, but in order to use that, you have to have trained knowledge, and you have to have understanding of music, of audio technologies, of everything. So it's not going to let's say, for example, a producer from a film studio or from a game studio, he wants to have like music, and he knows what he wants. He types a prompt and he puts it into his film, and it's like, yeah, but it's not working. Of course it's not working because it wasn't tailored for your film. And I am not sure that AI will be able to approach in a soulful way to composing music for film and for a video game in that way that it can work together with the media, that it can serve the picture or the gameplay. As a music piece for itself, yes, you have a lot of lo-fi AI generated ambient background music or EDM or hip hop and even artificial vocals and stuff like that, but you can still hear glitches to it.
Yeah.
So we're safe, people. Terminators will not kill us.
Maybe not in our lifetime, but in the next
lifetime.
generations.
Is that a problem?
Yeah, true.
It's their problem. Let them find John Connor of their own. And, it's like, we're all good.
Okay, good.
But I don't think, not even in the next generation, like, when sampling industry started out in early 2000, like virtual symphony orchestras, virtual, instruments, everything that I'm using in my day-to-day work, people were like, oh my God, symphony orchestras are going to lose their job. No, what came to happen is that thanks to these sampled orchestral instruments, people understand the meaning and uh, the importance of live symphony orchestra. Otherwise, Hollywood and Netflix and other production companies wouldn't, resolve to recording live musicians at Abbey Road, at Air Studios, at Sony, at whatever. We wouldn't be having any more live recording as of kind of like soundtracks and everything. We would just stay with sort of like classical music performances at Bolshoi Theater or something like that, and that's it. But no, it didn't happen. You have more and more symphony orchestras thriving, and more symphony orchestras working for the industry, creating and recording amazing pieces of music for video games and for films. And composers, what this basically serves for is that you give an actual demonstration of how music will sound when it's recorded for a film.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing, actually.
What's do you think? What game would you like to compose music for?
Just one?
Probably not.
Well, my sort of like my dream job would be to work on Halo franchise. That is what got me into gaming music. Yeah, that is what inspired me. And like, if I could just talk to someone from 343 Industries and sort of like ask them, like, I don't know, just like one piece of ambient music, in a world of Halo, that would be like a lifetime achievement for me. And see, here's an interesting thing. I worked together with the man who composed music for Halo, with Michael Salvatori. The way that I got my very first AAA project was in 2014, which is like 10 years ago.
No, it's 11 actually. Let me make you feel
God, I'm old. But in October of 2014, I will never forget that day. I was attending an Audio Engineering Society conference in Los Angeles, in the United States, and on the hallway of this of the LA Convention Center, where E3 was used to be organized. It's that big convention center. So it's I meet Marty O'Donnell. Marty O'Donnell, who composed the actual theme for Halo, and then later he was joined by Michael Salvatori on Halo 2, and I was like, I see the person coming towards me. I was like, I was standing like somebody nailed me to the ground, and I'm seeing it. My first comment was, "Holy fuck, you're Marty O'Donnell."
Oh my god.
That was my, and he was like, "Last time I checked, yes, my name is Marty O'Donnell." and he's like, I was like, "My name is Nikola. You're the main reason why I want to become a video game composer. Can I take a picture with you?" And he was kind enough to take a picture with me, and I posted it on Facebook. 3 days later, I get a friend request on Facebook by Mike Salvatori, who was at that time the audio director of Bungie Studio. Uh-huh. Marty O'Donnell left Bungie after first Destiny game was published. They fell out, and then kind of like he left the studio. Mike was left to be the audio director together with his team, and he sort of like, we talked together through Facebook, and he got interested into kind of like hearing my music. I sent him some at that time very poor demos, and he liked them very much, and he said, like, "Look, I'm going to give you a job application for Bungie, just to have you in our database, and if something happens in the near future, I would sort of like think of you." And I was like, like Mike Salvatore is interested in my music, and that was enough for me at that time. 2 years later, 2016, it was June 7th. I get a message on Facebook from Mike Salvatore. Hey, Nick, are you able to sign an NDA? And I'd like to talk to you about something on Skype if you're available.
This is how it happens.
I'm like, yes, of course, I'm able. Send me an NDA. I was like, I kept my poker face, I signed that NDA, and then I started twisting like Homer Simpson on the floor in the circle, like, oh my God, no, 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 no. And then he calls me on Skype, and he said like, well, okay, now that you have signed an NDA, I can tell you about this. We are starting to develop Destiny 2. It should come out in April next year. That was 2017. Or was it in September? In September of 2017. We have another spot on the music team for Destiny 2, and I'd like you to be a part of this team. And I was like, okay. Yeah, like, are you interested? Like, fuck yeah, I'm interested. And we signed an agreement, and we started working on Destiny 2. And that's how my sort of like, I put my foot in the AAA. And at that same time, that same year, now get this, that same year, I met in person Marcin Wszybilović, the audio director of CD Projekt Red. And I was, my involvement with Witcher Wild Hunt is like this. In 2015, CD Projekt Red organized a competition, a public competition for music producers and composers who could do remixes and cover versions of tracks from Witcher Wild Hunt. So CD Projekt Red, they provided stems and stuff like that, instrumental tracks that you can remix and do your own stuff. So I applied for that, and I talked to Marcin. We known each other via Facebook, for a couple of months before that, but we never talked in person. So I sent him my remix, my cover version of those ethnic Slavic pieces from Witcher Wild Hunt, which at that time I was listening to a lot of Arkona, the Russian folk metal band, and I wanted to create something like that. So like a heavy metal version with Slavic instrument, traditional, with like, gadulkas and gusli and everything, and those traditional Slavic voices and everything, and heavy metal guitars and drums and bass. And I sent them that, and Marcin loved it very much, so he included that into that compilation. And in 2016, after I signed this agreement with Bungie, I went to Game SoundCon conference in LA, and Marcin and Nikolai Stroinsky were the two composers of Witcher Wild Hunt at that time. They were giving their lecture and workshop on how they worked on Wild Hunt music and everything. We sat down, we talked quite a lot, and a year later, or maybe again 2 years later, Marcin and I talked, and then I got into cyberpunk. I did like one track for cyberpunk, and the way that I got this thing for cyberpunk is that I saw the announcement of cyberpunk trail, the Keanu Reeves announcement. That was 2018. Yeah. And I immediately, as soon as the trailer finished, Keanu Reeves jumps on the stage. I'm on Facebook. I'm texting Marcin, listen, I want to work on cyberpunk. I will do whatever it takes. At least one track, whatever you have. I will do bar music, whatever. I just want to be a part of this world and a part of the project with Keanu Reeves. So he was like, okay, we'll find something, So we did that. We did that. Like, I have this one track in cyberpunk, but it's like, so working on, to go back from this long digression, I would definitely love to work on Halo. I would love to work with Sony Studios on their games, with especially with Sony Santa Monica, like like stuff like God of War and Uncharted, The Last of Us. Those are the types of games the game that I enjoyed the most, and which aside from Halo, but my second most favorite game is Ghost of Tsushima. I would, I don't know, like I will work in a mine if I have a chance to get in touch with the developers from Sucker Punch, just to have like at least one track of music in Ghost of Yote.
They are creating a sequel, yeah.
In the sequel, I would love to be a part of that game. I trained Japanese sword fight, and I'm very much into their culture and everything. I would definitely love to work on that. Souls-like games, I worked on a couple. I worked on 2 games by Cradle Games that are called Hellpoint, which is like a sci-fi, dark, grim future of inspired by Dark Souls. But what else? Yeah. This game that Naughty Dog is working on right now. I forgot the name, but Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are composing music for it. They're my contemporary musical heroes because 9 Inch Nails. And I would love to be able to have a chance to work on this game with it. There's a lot of games that I would love to work on, actually, but a lot of games that inspire me to work on, to play, to listen music. I'd love to work on Assassin's Creed title. I'd love to work on a Call of Duty title. Those are all the games that I love playing, and Halo, Elder Scrolls, anything by or any franchise that sort of like is very dear. So I got to work on Aliens: Dark Descent. Aliens is like a thing for me. I got to work on Warhammer, so that's like one scratch off the list. I'd love to work on the next Witcher, for example. For sure. I still have to get in touch with them about that. Hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it will happen in like 7 years that they need to make the game. They just announced it, but if you remember, Cyberpunk was announced in 2015 or 2014, something like that. It was like release date when it's ready. So, how they have long times of talk, but those are and I'd love to work on any games that you guys are working on.
Well, wishing you luck with all those AAA projects.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds big, to be honest. Like, all of the names that you kind of spoke out are very big. But you've set your foot in AAA already, so.
Yeah.
My biggest challenge in this business is, networking. I'm a very introvert person, and I am rarely attending conferences or something, mostly due to the immense amount of work that I have, and sometimes I'm not able to travel to like these bigger conferences in Europe or in United States, but locally here in Belgrade, in Novi Sad, whatever, I can always, jump and see people and talk to. But, networking and, talking to game producers and game directors is something that was kind of like always a gray area for me, because I'd love to hear like what is it, for example, how to capture an attention of like a game producer, of a person who's pulling the strings in game production, more than with a CEO, for example, because the way that I understand gaming business is that CEOs are there to kind of like run the company, but the creative people who are behind the games are creative producers, artists.
For sure.
Mostly creative producers are the guys who are talking to creatives and to freelancers and outsourcing people to studios to help them. It's either an audio director or a creative producer. That's the way that's the way that I always had kind of like my experience is that, and that's the way that I understand it. I'm more of an artist than a businessman, and I understand that in this work you also need to be a businessman. So I still need to learn how to best
Sell yourself.
sell my craft,
Yeah.
and sell my story, because I go, from my own personal experience, I would hate if someone approached me and said like, can you give me a job? And I'm like, it's not like immediately when you approach these people, it's like, the way that I approach it is like, what it is that I can offer to you, and what it is that I can bring to your team and to your project more than what you can give me. Like I always approached that, and this is the advice that I can give to many, game professionals that are starting out, not just composers or sound designers, but even artists, programmers, modelers, whatever. The best way that you can approach to getting a job is that see what it is that you have in your skill set that can be crucial to your employer, and offer yourself without expecting anything in return. In that way, basically, that's how I got motivated to work in the gaming industry. It is like I wanted to be a part of this, and I wanted to satisfy and feed the hunger that I have for telling stories and for composing music for stories, more than being rich and famous and whatever it is. I live and breathe music every day, and it is the way that I the way that I approach this is basically what it is that I can give to you more than what it is that I can get from you. People don't like this way of approach. Like, and this is what I always am picking. I'm always thinking in my head and double checking my approach to a potential client. Especially when writing to someone for the first time. It's like, hey, I'm this, I'm that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it's very complicated. It's like I always get the feeling that I'm approaching people like that I'm asking something, and I wasn't raised in such a way that I always go and ask people, even though many game professionals have told me like, you don't know until you asked. So I always approach this like, would you be interested in reviewing my portfolio? And I still approach every new client like it's the biggest opportunity of my life. No matter the projects that I worked on, every project that I work on, I treat it with the same importance, regardless of the budget, regardless of the name of the studio that it is, regardless of the people who are working there. I give my 100% to a mobile game the same way that I would do it for a AAA game. That's the point. That's the approach that I can advise to young people who would want to be a part of this industry.
Right. I mean, that's very helpful, isn't it? It's kind of psychological thing, but also, if you implement that, then you're all set.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a cowboy standoff, especially when you're talking about budget. Like, what's your rate? What's your budget? What's your rate? What's your budget? Yeah, so it's always, I mean, the way that I approach is like, I don't think that much about the money that I can get out of this game project, more than like, let's create a story. Like I said, I'm a storyteller. Let's create a story together, and let's make an agreement that will benefit us both. So let's say I can say my rates are this and this. They can immediately, they could immediately withdraw from this because like, well, it's too expensive for us. and that is the way that I always the way that now I'm approaching is like, my rates are like this, but tell me what is your budget, and let us see what we can do to find a middle ground that will suit the both of us, so that we can create something good together, so that we're all satisfied. That is the reason why I got into video games, to kind of like be a part of creative processes and share the inspiration and artwork with hundreds of other people.
Mm-hmm. I have a question which might be a bit dumb, and I'm sorry for that, but
there are no dumb
this is
questions.
this is what I'm here for. So basically, as I see the process from my side, the client comes to me when everything is the idea is kind of there already, and there is something left out that they want to outsource or outstaff, they need our help with, and then we step in. We co-develop, we produce art, we localize the game, we test it, we do the stuff. But how does it work with creating music for the game? What stage are they coming to you at?
Oh, there are no rules. There were projects where I was introduced at the GDD stage, you know, and there are projects where I was introduced in the middle ground. Like, we have a demo ready, we have sound, we have everything, but we need music for it. And if it works good, we'll continue working on the music for it. It's usually like that. I am never approached when the game is in its late stages, because they're already filled, with music and with sound and everything. But it's usually either at a concept stage or either at like, we have a working demo. Now we need music for it, and if it all works out, let's continue working on that.
Yeah, how do you know if it works out? So basically, I know the concept of test jobs in the industry, right? So the client comes to you and he says, I want this like concept art. Can we make a test job? We give you small piece of what we need, and then you do it. They pay you for it, and they see if they want to continue with you or not. How does it work with music? You cannot create a 10-second sample and deliver it and be like, okay, you get the rest if you pay me. But how does it work?
It's called a music pitch, basically. So it's like 1 minute of music, 2 minutes. It's usually around like a 1 minute of music idea that you send to a client. That's the way that I'm approaching to a project right now. Like, we're still at this concept music stages where we're thinking about many genres, many positions, because this game is very, very unique. It's very, we tried traditional approaches, it didn't work out. Now we're trying something unorthodox, and so it's usually like that. They send me, for example, the GDD. They send me the concept artwork. And they send me they ask me for example, these are the music examples that we think that would fit. Can you create us like a musical theme that would represent our game musically? And that's the way that I do it. That's the way that I approach it. And then we go, like, when you have this, it's like a concept art for music. And once we are over that, then we go into developing it into like a main menu theme, the main melody theme, leitmotif, stuff like that. And then we go into gameplay. Then we define how the gameplay should work, how the musical system will work, what they need. And it's different from developer to developer. It's usually, some people like to have like traditional, just one piece of music, like a piece of music that loops infinitely. Others love to have, for like a gameplay, a playlist of various ambient music that will play in the background, and playlist of various combat music that will play in the background. Some people like an interactive music system that's, like for like a AAA or for a high budget indie game or something like that. And that's the way that it's always different. But it all starts at a concept stage for music. But the approach it begins with either a GDD document with some concept art or with a gameplay demo that needs music.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
I have another question which might sound
Uh-huh.
a bit uncomfortable, but I just want to
No.
ask it. So basically, you said it depends on the developer, right? Whether you go further or not. Have you ever had a situation where, like, the developer, you kind of agreed on something at first, but then, yeah, they gave up on the project or something happened, you got interrupted?
Yeah, it happens all the time. It happens every year. I have at least one project that's a dropout. And it's not because it's usually not because the music was. There were situations where my music was not up to task, and I never felt sort of like you feel hurt at with that, like, but rejections are a part of day-to-day life. I needed to grow up when I became a composer. Composing and working in this industry made me grow up substantially because when I was young and when I was starting out, I remember 6 years ago, or now it's 9 years ago. No, 7 years ago. Well, 6 and 9 are like it's just the other way around. Okay, I was bad at math at school. Yeah. I failed math class at my university because I was playing Mass Effect Trilogy like crazy, and I forgot to show up for math test, for the math exam, and I had to apply for math exam for the next semester. So, but I was Captain Shepard, so Commander Shepard. But no, sorry, it wasn't worth. But there were situations in 2018. I remember I was living in a rented apartment with my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife right now. And we were living in a small rented apartment. And I will not lie to you, but I believe I sent 1,150 emails to various developers. Out of those 1,150, I got reply from 20. Out of those 20, I was rejected 15.
Oh, that hurts.
Those 5 are my clients even today. The other 5 who accepted are my clients even today.
But that's cool. I mean, the conversion rate is not that high, but I mean, they're long lasting. You managed to keep them. That's cool.
It helped me put my foot through the door.
Yeah.
And, I have only 2 AAA projects that I worked on. That's Destiny and that's Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And I still talk to people from AAA industry. And even from AAA and from high budget indie, from AA, I get rejected. Here's, for example, I got rejected for Space Marine 2. And I'm the guy who worked on so many Warhammer 40,000 games. But why was I rejected? Because they already had a composer.
You were too late, huh?
Yeah, I was late. Most of my rejections are because I was late, because, the game development is such a secretive business that you don't know who's doing what until you see an announcement trailer on YouTube or something.
True.
And then you approach them. So it's very difficult to reach out to new clients. And it's mostly my success so far has been word to mouth. So getting rejected is a part of my work all the time. And I was working on many games that, I mean, I wasn't working on them obviously because I got rejected, but I applied to a lot and I was approached by a lot of developers. And every year there's at least there's just this one project that really hurts me, and it was like last year. It dropped out. Well, maybe it dropped out, but it was rejected by the publisher, and then the studio lost their financing and everything. And we made such great music for this because the story is something that I enjoyed very much, which was like a combination of high fantasy music that's like for, I don't know, Dragon Age and that kind of music, like Dragon Age meets hard rock and heavy metal and blues and medieval tavern music, and it was a dream project for me. I played like 5 instruments on that. I played electric guitar, I played Irish bouzoukis, I played cymbalums, I play violins on that and stuff, percussions, synthesizers, big symphony orchestra, everything. The music was so good, we were all happy with it. And then we're out of budget. The publisher is also making. It was at that period of large, firings from gaming industry, where like more than like 5,000 people lost their jobs. It was one of that, and that project dropped, and it still hurts me even today, but it was such an amazing project. It was such an amazing project, and I had so much fun working on it. I remember I worked 18 hours a day on music on that, not because I needed to, just because I wanted to. I really enjoyed it. I really, really, really enjoyed working on that.
Yes.
There will be new projects.
Yeah, there will be new projects your way for
There
sure.
will
And
be.
sorry about that. Yeah.
Of course, and some projects will, get accepted. Some projects will, be declined. It's a part of, like
Part
when you
of
go
the
into
process.
when
Just one last question from me, probably.
Mhm.
You mentioned you like guitar, you like prefer it over the other instruments.
Yes.
Are you a fan of Latko Stefanovsky by any chance?
Yes.
Oh, okay, of
Yes,
course.
I actually met him. Of course,
Yeah.
I actually met him in person. He's such an amazing man.
He is. I'm pretty sure he is.
Probably the last question from us today.
Yes.
The visionary one.
Yeah.
Like,
Prophecy.
what do you think? Yes, within 5 to 10 years, what the gaming industry will look like?
Ooh, tough one. The way that I see it this way, I can see how it will. The answer that I can give is I can see how it will look like if things don't change.
Yeah.
The current situation in the gaming industry is not exactly particularly good in my opinion. There was a speech by CEO from Larian Studios at the latest Game Award shows. I'm sure you probably listened to it. And what he said, that the next game of the year will be next year. And he said that the game of the year will be the game that cares about its workers, about its developers, will be a game by a studio that cares about its employees. It will be a game that cares about, it will be a game by a studio that cares about its players. And it will be a game by a studio that cares more about telling a great story and making an impact in the gaming industry than chasing for revenue. And I think that the gaming industry in the last 5 years is a massive revenue chase. And I think that the game, if it continues as a revenue chase in the next 5 years, it will not look good. The way what the gaming industry needs to do is to pay more attention to storytelling and to creating and to being in touch with the community of their fans and listening to what the fans want, more than trying to create the next Fortnite. The way that gaming industry will look like in 5 years, if it doesn't cure this disease of revenue chase and remakes of the remakes, will not bode well for neither the game studios nor us players, the fans.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, we've covered all the questions probably. So, thank you so much for coming to us tonight and Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. And like, subscribe, comment as usual.
Thank you
Links,
for
yeah.
thank you for making me a part of this, for inviting me